So we're standing along the I. Yeah, how to call it actually? Is it a river? Is it a water body that has always been central to Amsterdam? Yeah, and what we hear is, let's listen for a sec. Yeah, we hear a mix of humans and non-humans, birds, bikes passing by. You don't hear the water actually, even though we're standing right on top of it, interestingly enough. Seagulls. No cars. And laughter. Yeah, so this is a place that is full of history, and depending on how far you go back in time, you can tell different narration of the relationship with water. So we're standing in front of the Lloyd Hotel, which used to be the place from where migrants would leave for Latin America, and they would embark on huge ships that were actually right where we are now. So that's maybe the near past, but if you go further back in time, we were actually standing in the middle of the sea. So this was the inland sea called the Zuiderzee, the Southern Sea. And all of this was water, basically. And there's a sign of human life as well. I imagine this, if we would be floating on this sea, then in the back we would not be able to see land, probably. Because it would stretch as far as, Kampen, like all the way across the Southern Sea, the Zuiderzee. And then if we would look in the other direction of the Lloyd Hotel, we would be seeing the city, the skyline of the city with, or not even the city, just marshlands and maybe people dwelling in little huts trying to, survive in this wet environment. So this location, I think, is very emblematic for all kinds of places around the world, and also along the Rhine River that we visited during our research trip, which have changed quite dramatically and fundamentally over the centuries, but there's still a link to the water. And I think increasingly what we see here is that, let's say, humans have invaded this wet land and they've built their world in the water, kind of occupying the water. And now everything looks controlled, and in a way it is. Even the water quality is controlled by humans, so you can actually swim here. But I think it's quite deceiving, because only 2 years ago we had this kind of critical event in this same water body where there was simultaneously, there were multiple problems happening, which rarely happens. I think the chances of it happening are close to none. So there was this ship lock far away from here that didn't work. There was high tide, there was a strong storm, and I think we were this close to having a real catastrophe where the water would literally spill over the water side and into the city. So I think the tranquility that we experience today, especially today with this sunny weather, it's just one version of this reality. And I think in the near future we will experience more of these, let's say, almost disasters, but one day for sure we will not be able to cope with it anymore, and the water will strike back. So I've been looking at water and the Rhine River in particular through this lens of what I call, or borrowing from Dilip Cunha and Anuradha Mathur, ubiquitous wetness, so omnipresent wetness. And maybe now standing here, and it's so peaceful, and the water is just below us, and there's another wrinkle on its surface. You don't think of it as omnipresent, right? It sits there very safely and neatly, and you don't feel threatened by it in any way. But I think if you would come here on a rainy day, it would already be quite different, because then the water is around you. It's falling from the sky, it's underneath you. And I think increasingly with climate change, we will see these like very harsh extreme weather conditions where you will be, in a way, experiencing the river from within. So it's not some external phenomenon that you can observe from a distance, but in a weird and bizarre and threatening way, I think it will be all around us. So this is what I was interested in, and I mean, I live here, so I witnessed this place throughout the year, and I've had moments here where the wind was blowing really hard, and I tried to get home on my bike, and I almost was blown into the water, so you could almost feel this possibility of being stuck in ubiquitous wetness. Yeah, and I think that's something to consider for all of us, because I think this peacefulness is something we can all experience, especially now in spring, in summer. Yeah, but we should start preparing for ubiquitous wetness. I think water for many centuries or millennia even has been instrumentalized by humans, either as a surface to sail on, to colonize other parts of the world, or as something to harvest, for the industrial age, water mills, etc., or as something to recreate in. So I think it has always, or not always, but for a long time it has been seen as something that facilitates our needs. But I think we're at a point now where that cannot hold much longer. I think the water will come back and it will be ferocious. So if we start to understand this notion of ubiquity in connection to wetness, I think maybe in a not so dramatic way, slowly we start to realize that water is actually not sitting safely within two lines or within two riverbanks, but it's actually all around us, and we can start rehearsing for what it means if this water intensity increases, and if the humidity that we feel in the air is not only something you see on your iPhone, but that is actually slapping you in the face. And how are you going to deal with that before we have to bring in the lifeboats?